All right, we're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. I appreciate you joining with us this morning. Thank you. We're going to tackle the top 10 excuses that we're being fed by the administration now for all of the nonsense that's going on with this Obamacare disaster. The segment after this, we're going to talk about what's going on with the security issues on Obamacare. And for the record, the state of Vermont has declared an emergency escape clause, if you will, or a pressure relief valve to isolate and separate Vermont from the mandates that are going to take place by the 31st of December. Their governor, they designed and built their own healthcare type .gov type system, and theirs is not working a whole lot better. They've only gotten, I think it's 2,300 people that have signed up, and they are declaring a relief valve that will enable folks to keep their insurance beyond December 31st and go all the way to March 1st. Of course, the problem with that is that he's got to get the buy-in of the insurance companies in order to accomplish that, because nobody really knows yet at this point how they're going to accomplish that. You know, insurance, typically your deductible runs from the first of the year to the 31st, right? And so if he allows these people to stay on, there's a host of questions. How do you accomplish it? Do they get a new insurance card? Does their deductible begin to run, but only for that 90-day period? I mean, folks, I got to tell you, the overall disaster of this, the debacle of this Obamacare thing is just, it is so devastating to our nation. And I don't think most people even understand the true level of trouble that we're in with this. We can't spend enough money to buy our way out of this problem. We just can't. There's not enough resources. There's not enough money to spend to fix this. They don't have the ability and the wherewithal to get the technological aspects of it corrected. And the societal implications and the impact on this is so strong, so broad, the depth of it is, and the scope of it is so large. I mean, we're talking about the impact on literally tens of millions of Americans. Maybe as many as 100 million people are going to be impacted by this. And the truth of the matter is that what we're seeing in terms of the nonsense that has been envisioned for this is that it is contrary to everything that we as Americans stand for, the ability to freely choose what you want. You're being forced by to execute commerce in order to be a citizen in good standing. That's not a principle of liberty. That's not a principle of freedom. And the truth of the matter is, they can't come up with enough excuses and reasons to resolve this dilemma. They just can't. There aren't enough ways that they can manipulate this to make it seem as if it's all okay. It's not. And what we're seeing now is really, really dangerous stuff. I mean, there's an article on Drudge Report this morning about a woman who has been fighting stage 4 gallbladder cancer for the last 5 years. Now, according to her statement, only 2% of people have a whatever you call it, a life expectancy of beyond a year when they have this particular type of cancer. And she's been fighting it for 5. She just found out that her insurance has been canceled, though. And she has no idea what she's going to do after January 1st. How is she going to continue to fight this going forward? Her doctors are being canceled. The health insurance policy she has, and she readily admits they've spent well over $1 million in the past 5 years to keep her alive. But it's all going bye-bye now. It's all being canceled. Now she has to go find new doctors. I mean, that's insane. How can you justify that? The ridiculous aspect of this thing is, that we are being, for all intents and purposes, played to believe that this is the a system which is actually operating in our benefit. And nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, we're seeing the results of this as we speak. Everything that's going on in Obamacare right now is wrong for America on literally every level. The fact that you are barred from being able to have your own decisions and your own choices is bad enough. But couple that together with the fact that your ability to find a solution. Wow, I mean, we're talking about some serious implications here. If you are losing your insurance, and I did a whole show about this. What happens to those people who are in the midst of surgical procedures, who are in the midst of life-threatening diseases, who have diabetes and chronic ailments and illnesses? What happens to them? But these people over there in D.C., boy, they're sticking to their guns. It's all, it's all exactly what the president said. If you like your health care plan, you can keep it. Well, that we all know that not to be true. And the truth of the matter is, I would like to see a dedicated investigation into when the president was personally informed. I want to hear from him under oath in a testimony that he never knew up until his last time he said that, which was only about a month or two ago, that he did not know that this was the case. And then I want a couple of whistleblowers to come forward and testify that he did know, because they personally know that he knew, either because they told him or through experience or what have you. Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is an impeachable offense. Their excuses are pretty lame. There's 10 of them out there that we hear on a routine basis. 1, transitioning. Americans aren't receiving cancellation notices. They're getting help transitioning off their previous plan. That was Sander Levin from Michigan. You got to be kidding me. It's like saying your insurance isn't being canceled. We're helping you transition to the Pine Box Brigade. Excuse number 2, bad apple insurers. This is out of an article at National Review, by the way. I'll post it in the section, the description section at the bottom, beneath my own comments. So if you want to read it for yourself, you can. Obama laid the blame for canceled plans on bad apple insurers. Well, hold on a second. These are the same insurers that you've been touting how great they are. These are the same insurers that you're enriching, frankly, with this program by enabling them to raise premiums without any regard whatsoever. In fact, Mr. President, you personally lifted the cap that said after January 1st, it wasn't January 1st. I think it was August 1st. After August 1st, they were no longer allowed to jack premiums up. And that was right after you limited, or you gave a special dispensation to big business. So what you were essentially saying is the insurance companies have another year to reach into the pockets of the American population because you lifted the cap on the premium plans for these same insurers that you're calling bad apples now. 3, conversion letters. During a weekly press conference, Nancy Pelosi tried to correct reports of cancellation letters by referring to them as conversion letters. Her explanation was that these plans have changed since the law, and that the positioning of patients is being improved by a patient bill of rights. And the plans change from year to year anyway. We're not fooled for a moment, Nancy. We understand exactly what you're doing. These aren't conversion letters marching us down the nudge channel of Cass Sunstein. %, bullet point number 4. Obama, Pelosi, and the other Democrats are trying to downplay the scale of the cancellation problem by suggesting that fewer than 5% of Americans will be affected. That's a lie. Forbes calculated it as at 93 million. That's not 5%. There are other actual estimates coming from other sources that say it could be as high as 130 million people. But you see, they want to use legalese to twist everything that's ever stated. And then they come back later on and quantify it by saying, well, what we really meant was we were only talking about the sliver. The lies are too great for America to accept any longer. And this entire debacle of Obamacare can and should be the motivating factor for this nation to rise up and say, we've had enough. The claim of substandard policies, bullet number 5. Press Secretary Jay Carney, I don't know how this guy sleeps at night. I mean, I get it. His job is to make this president look good. But, you know, Jay Carney started out as a journalist. And I got to imagine that he must go home at night and look at himself in the mirror. And he's got to be drinking himself to sleep or something, because I don't know how the guy can stand there and look at his own visage in the mirror. He tried to tell us that substandard plans would be terminated because they don't provide coverage for, you know, the ridiculous stuff like maternity care for men, single men. That it doesn't offer rehabilitation services for people who don't drink and don't do drugs. That maternity care being offered for elderly women is substandard, is part of a substandard plan. Who would choose to have maternity care at 50, 60, 70 years old? I mean, does that mean that if you can prove that you are sterile, that you should get a waiver? I would imagine so. The claim of a fraction of a fraction. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't recognize this for the propaganda that it is, later in the week, Jay Carney actually came out and said that Americans are losing their health care plans, and the amount of them was actually a fraction of the population. Well, that may be true. But, you know, 98% out of 100 is a fraction. And if 98% of the 98% are losing their health care, that is a fraction of a fraction, Jay. He's called the plans crummy, saying that they are substandard and that those people who are actually getting bumped are a small sliver of the population. Well, with all due respect, Mr. Carney, I don't believe, and I'll use Forbes' low estimate of 93 million, not the higher estimates of 129 million, which are far more egregious. But Forbes literally came out and said 93 million, and they did their numbers pretty carefully. And I don't know how you call 93 million people a small fraction, a sliver of the population. I get it. It is a fraction of a fraction. Frank Pallone. I put this video up on our Facebook page because I was watching the news when this guy came on and tried to explain to Megyn Kelly of Fox News in her segment. He came on there, and the guy was so disingenuous. I mean, it was almost comical. In fact, my son commented, and he said, this guy looks like the Cowardly Lion on drugs. He called the pre-Obamacare insurance plans a scam. Well, with all due respect, Mr. Pallone, and the rest of you sycophants and syphilitic brain-dead monkeys up in Congress, you're the guys who were supposed to be regulating them. So if all of this has been a scam all these years, who does that fault fall back on? Who does the blame fall back on if every insurance plan out there, prior to the magnificent, wonderful unicorn fart of Obamacare, who does that responsibility fall back on? Were you not regulating these same insurance companies then? I mean, that's what you claim to have been doing for all this time, spending our money regulating, and regulating. So, if in fact they are all scams, what that tells us is that you haven't been doing your job. He told Megyn Kelly that they were lousy and skeletal. And then they're going to justify that by saying, well, it's not really Congress's right to step into the open marketplace and affect commerce. You can't have it both ways. The only reason that monopolies like insurance companies and utilities and all the rest of them exist is because government regulation paid for by lobbyists from those regulatory departments, or to those regulatory departments, you have exacerbated the problem. It's ridiculous. The lobbyists send in all of this money. You pass legislation. You sit on a committee that's supposed to be an oversight. They bribe you, the same companies that you're supposed to be overseeing. They bribe you with untold globs of money. And then you pass a regulation that is inherently really even more of a giveaway to them at the expense of the people you're supposed to be representing. Then you have the nerve to turn around and call it a scam and skeletal and lousy. What? How stupid do you think we are? James Carville. That guy looks like Skeletor. He argues that the plans were canceled, and this is bullet number 8. They weren't health insurance because they didn't meet certain requirements. What? You know, the absurdity and the hypocrisy of these arguments are absolutely astounding. He calls it irresponsible that these plans didn't offer certain types of coverage. Why is it irresponsible, Mr. Carville, for a company to say, if you're a single man, you don't have to buy maternity care. You don't have to buy lactation services. Lactation services. I mean, what is any male going to do with that? That if you are not a drinker, if you are not a user of drugs, you know who you are, you know what your habits are, and you opt out and say, I really don't need rehabilitation services. If you have a good, solid foundation and you are not mentally incapacitated, you have the right and the option to say, I really don't want to buy mental health services. If I feel like I need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I can do that on my own as, when, and if I have a need for it. That's not irresponsible. That's called fiscal responsibility on the part of the person who says, hey, listen, my wife and I, we're in our 60s. We really don't have a need for maternity care. Biologically, we can't use it. That's not irresponsible. That's called freedom of choice. Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, he was telling MSNBC, or MSLSD as I like to call them, Andrea Mitchell, that these previous plans were empty, quote unquote, and they deserve to be canceled. Well, they're not empty, sir. They're only empty because they don't give you the opportunity to redistribute vast quantities of the American wealth. And they don't give the government an opportunity to literally take upon themselves the idea that they can have all the information about every American citizen. Their actions and their behavior, their suggestions, their arguments, they literally are treasonous. Mary Landrieu, the senator from Louisiana, she's in a battle for re-election right now, and there's a lot of people who would like to see her booted. She claims that the party vow was qualified, and much more qualified than it sounded like to your lion ears, right? Here's what she says. We said when we passed that, if you had insurance that was good insurance, that if you wanted to keep it, you could keep it. That's not true at all, Landrieu. You're a liar, and we all know it. That's not what the president said. He didn't say, if you like your doctor, and he's a good doctor, and you can keep him. If you like your insurance, and it's good insurance, you can keep it. That's not what he said at all. He said, if you like your doctor, you can keep it. Keep that doctor, and we're not going to interfere. If you have insurance and you like that insurance, you may keep it. And then he ended the statement with, period. We know what he meant. He knew what he meant. You knew what he meant. Now you want to come back after the fact and try to utilize your skills in language and legalese to try to change the tone and the tenor of what we just heard. The testimony we have all been witness to. What I want to hear is testimony under oath with the president with his hand on a Bible, and then I want to hear when he knew, as the reports are now telling us, that 3.5 years ago, the Democrats published in the Federal Register, so it's undeniable, that they expected that as many as 65% of all the plans would be canceled. So when did you know that, Mr. President? Then I would like somebody in that administration who has the courage of their convictions, who has the brass, who has the chutzpah, who has the courage of their convictions to step forward and say, I personally informed the president. I had the discussion with him. And I'd like you to bring this man down before he does any further damage to this country. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle the topic of the security flaws that are already out there and exposed. I'm going to tell you about the story of a guy who actually logged on there, registered and logged on to find out what the decision was about his health care, and he got somebody else's approval letter. When he told the guy, he contacted the guy whose approval letter he got, and the guy wasn't even aware of it. He said, I looked at those plans. I wouldn't buy those. They're too expensive. Man, are we in trouble. You're listening to America's Voice. We'll be right back. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Hang on one second. We'll be right back.